Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever the time may be where you're listening to this. Today I've been learning about the Code of Hammurabi. The Code of Hammurabi is one of the earliest and most complete written legal codes proclaimed by the Babylonian king Hammurabi. It is a set of 282 rules/laws establishing standards and setting fines and punishments for certain crimes. The 282 edicts are all written in if-then form. For example, if a man steals an ox, then he must pay back 30 times its value. The edicts range from a family law to professional contracts and administrative law, often outlining different standards of justice. A doctor's fee for curing a severe wound would be 10 silver shekels for a gentleman, 5 shekels for a freedman, and 2 shekels for a slave. Penalties for malpractice followed the same scheme. A doctor who killed a rich patient would have his hands cut off, while only financial restitution was required if the victim was a slave. A little bit about King Hammurabi. He reigned from 1792 to 1750 BC. He expanded Babylon along the Tigris and Euphrates River to unite all of southern Mesopotamia, overthrowing the kingdoms of Assyria, Lhasa, Ashana, and Mari. This was in the 30th year of his reign. He was the 6th king in the Babylonian dynasty. The dynasty ruled Mesopotamia, which is now present-day Iraq, from 1894 to 1595 BC. His family descended from the Amorites, a semi-nomadic tribe in western Syria. His name includes Hamu, which means family in Amorite, combined with Arabi, meaning great in Akkadian, which is the language of Babylon. In 1901, Jacques de Morgan, a French mining engineer, led an archaeological expedition to Persia to excavate the Elamite capital of Susa, more than 250 miles from the center of Hammurabi's kingdom. There they uncovered the stele of Hammurabi broken into 3 pieces that had been brought to Susa as spoils of war, likely by the Elamite king Shutruk Nahante in the mid-12th century BC. The stele was packed up and shipped to the Louvre in Paris, and within a year it had been translated and widely publicized as the earliest example of written legal code. Hammurabi's code is one of the most famous examples of the ancient precept of lex talionis, or law of retribution, a form of retaliatory justice commonly associated with the saying, an eye for an eye. Under this system, if a man broke the bone of one of his equals, his own bone would be broken in return. Capital crimes, however, were often met with their own unique and grisly death penalties. If a son and mother were caught committing incest, they were burned to death. If a pair of scheming lovers conspired to murder their spouses, both were impaled. Even a relatively minor crime could earn the offender a horrific fate. For example, if a son hit his father, the code demanded the boy's hands be hewn off, or chopped off. For crimes that could not be proven or disproven with hard evidence, such as claims of sorcery, the code allowed for a trial by ordeal, an unusual practice where the accused was placed in a potentially deadly situation as a way of determining innocence. The code notes that if an accused man jumps into the river and drowns, his accuser shall take possession of his house. However, if the gods spared the man and allowed him to escape unhurt, the accuser would be executed, and the man who jumped in the river would receive his house. Hammurabi's code took a brutal approach to justice, but the severity of the criminal penalties often depended on the identity of both the lawbreaker and the victim. While one law commanded, if a man knock out the teeth of his equal, his teeth shall be knocked out. committing the same crime against a member of a lower class was punished with only a fine. Other rank-based penalties were even more significant. If a man killed a pregnant maidservant, he was punished with a monetary fine. But if he killed a freeborn pregnant woman, his own daughter would be killed as retribution. The code also listed different punishments for men and women with regard to marital infidelity. Men were allowed to have extramarital relationships with maidservants and slaves, but philandering women were to be bound and tossed into the Euphrates River along with their lovers. The code was surprisingly ahead of its time when it came to laws addressing subjects like divorce, property rights, and the prohibition of incest. But perhaps most progressive of all was a stipulation mandating an ancient form of minimum wage. Several edicts in the code referenced specific occupations and dictated how much the workers were to be paid. Field laborers and herdsmen were guaranteed a wage of 8 gur of corn per year, and ox drivers and sailors received 6 gur. Doctors, meanwhile, were entitled to 5 shekels for healing a freeborn man of a broken bone or other injury, but only 3 shekels for a freed slave and 2 shekels for a slave. Here are some of the laws that I was able to find. If a herdsman whose care cattle or sheep have been entrusted be guilty of fraud and make false returns of natural increase or sell them for money, then he shall be convicted and pay the owner 10 times their loss. If anyone take a male or female slave of the court, or a male or female slave of a freedman outside the city gates, he shall be put to death. If anyone is committing a robbery and is caught, then he shall be put to death. If anyone be too apathetic to keep his dam in primely condition, and does not so keep it, if then the dam break and all the fields be flooded, then shall he in whose dam the break occurred be sold for money, and the money shall replace the crops which he has caused to be ruined. And one of the best-known laws from Hammurabi's code: if a man destroy the eye of another man, they shall destroy his eye. If one break a man's bone, they shall break his bone. If one destroy the eye of a free man, or break the bone of a free man, he shall pay 1 gold mina. If one destroy the eye of a man's slave, or break a bone of the man's slave, he shall pay 1/2 of his price. Alright, to conclude, the Code of Hammurabi was one of the earliest and most complete written legal codes, proclaimed by the Babylonian king Hammurabi. It is 282 rules and laws establishing standards and setting fines and punishments for certain crimes. The code is carved onto a large finger-shaped black stone stele, or pillar. It is a single 4-ton slab of diorite, which is a durable but incredibly difficult stone for carving. It is 7 foot 5 inches tall, and is covered in columns of chiseled cuneiform script. It also includes a 2.5 foot relief carving of a standing up Hammurabi receiving the law from a sitting down Shamash, whom is the Babylonian god of justice. It provides one of the earliest examples of the doctrine lex talionis, or the laws of retribution, sometimes better known as an eye for an eye. And as we have discovered, it includes many harsh punishments, such as removing the guilty party's tongue, hands, breast, eye, or ear, and is one of the earliest examples of an accused being considered innocent until proven guilty. And today, the pillar is kept on display at the Louvre Museum in Paris. And that's all I have for the time being on the Code of Hammurabi. I will include the links to the sources I have used to research this historical artifact. And I will also include a picture of it on the video screen, should you be listening on YouTube. And that's all I have for now on episode 2 of this podcast type thing. You can check me out on Instagram, Bretwes, Bretwes, or Twitter, Bretical, Bretticl, if you wish. You don't have to. Other than that, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, morning, evening, afternoon. Have a good one. Goodbye.